Greeting everyone. Dear students, in our today's IT class, we will learn an important concept of computer science that is related to the management of data, which is in the terms of database and database management system, that is DBMS. Before database and DBMS, we were using the traditional file system approach. But nowadays, data and databases are extremely important because we are using it everywhere, from the banking app that shows your balance to social media, online shopping, etc. It is the backbone of almost every digital service. So before we get into the topic, let's see the learning objectives of this topic. After watching this video, students will be able to easily differentiate between the basic concepts of database, that is data and information. They can easily explain the concept of database and DBMS. They will identify the different components of database. They will understand the meaning of different keys in database management system. They will identify the different types of keys and use those keys with simple table examples. So let's start with the basic concepts of database, that is data and information. Now what is data? Data is raw facts or figures, or data is a collection of raw facts and figures. For example, 30, 40, Rahul, math, science. This is data. But data is raw, unprocessed facts that do not have any clear meaning by themselves. For example, these values alone do not tell the full story. But if I say that student Rahul scored 30 marks in maths and 40 marks in science, then it has some meaning. It means we simply arrange the data in a sequential manner or in a structured manner. So that is the processed data. It means raw facts are called as data, and the data after processing becomes information which has some meaning. So the next concept is database and DBMS. Now, database, what is database? Database is an organized collection of large amount of data that we stored electronically so that we can easily access, manage and update the data stored in the database. There are various advantages of database over the traditional data storage systems. The very first one is it reduces data redundancy. Now what is data redundancy? Data redundancy means the duplication of data. In traditional systems, data is stored at the multiple places, but in database, in the concept of database, the data is stored on the centralized servers. So it prevents the duplication of data. So it reduces data redundancy. Next one is when redundancy gets reduced, it ensures the accuracy and consistency of data. Means there are no multiple copies of data and there are no mismatching copies of data. So it increases the accuracy and consistency of data, which is called as data integrity. It maintains data integrity. Next, no unauthorized users can easily access the data from the database. So it provides, database concepts provide data security. Next one is data sharing. Multiple users can access the same data simultaneously. Like from bank database, multiple users can access the same data simultaneously. But it's very difficult for us, or very difficult for the human beings to control such huge amount of data. So we need some softwares which acts as an interface between database and users, or different apps that access the data from the database, and those softwares are called as DBMS. So what is DBMS? DBMS is a software or set of programs that are used to create, manage, update and retrieve the data from the database. The real life examples of DBMSs are that we are using MySQL, MS Oracle, and in our syllabus we have LibreOffice Base. And the real life applications of databases are school management system, bank database, railway database, hospital records. Now the next term is relational database. There are various types of database like network database, hierarchical database, but in our syllabus we have relational database. Relational database where the data is stored in the form of tables. Tables means the collection of rows and columns. All of us know that table is a collection of rows and columns. But in relational database we use some different terminologies for these rows and columns. The very first one is, in relational database, a table is called as relation. We can call it as a table or relation. Like in our example, we have a table for student entity. Entity is that real world object for which we are going to store the data in the table. So here the name of the table is student, and next thing is we can call it as table, student table or student relation. Second thing is record or tuple. In journal, a row is we call a row. Okay? A horizontal line is called as row. But in DBMS or relational database, a row is called as record or tuple. So what is a row? A row is called as record or tuple. Here we have two records in our table, student. Third thing is attribute or field. A table or a column in a relation is called as attribute or field. Student, again remember, a table is called as relation, a row is called as record or tuple, a column in a table is called as attribute or field. And next, the concept of keys. In relational database, data is not stored in a single table. We have to store the data in the multiple tables to maintain the accuracy of the data and to reduce the redundancy of data. So the next concept, very important concept, is related to keys in DBMS. Keys. A key is basically an attribute, or you can say a field or set of fields which helps to identify a record or row in a table. They allows us to find the relationship between two tables. If you store the data in multiple tables and you want to retrieve the data from the multiple tables, then we need these keys. A key is an attribute. Okay. Key also helpful for finding the unique records or row from the table. There are basically following types of keys in relational database: primary key, candidate key, alternate key, foreign key and composite key, and we will learn it one by one. So first key is primary key. The main or the important one is primary key. Now what is primary key? A primary key is that attribute or that column or that field which can uniquely identify each record in a table. Okay, if you want to uniquely identify each record in a table, that is called as primary key. Students, can you tell me, if I stored the data for the students, which field, which student attribute can act as a primary key which can uniquely identify each student in a class? Yes, that is your roll number. Yes, roll number is that field which can uniquely identify each student in a class. So that is your primary key. So there is only one primary key in the table, and next property of primary key is cannot contain the null value. For example, let us take an example of employee table. It has 5 fields or column. I am just taking the schema of the table or the structure of the table. Table name is employee and having 5 fields, that is employee ID, employee name, employee address, passport number and license number. And from these fields, employee ID, passport number and license number has the unique value for the employee. But the primary key is unique. So we can take only one field as a primary key, and in our table employee ID will act as a primary key. Now the next concept is of candidate keys. All those keys or all those fields which can uniquely identify each record or each tuple, that are called as candidate keys. There are more than one candidate keys in a table. For example, in our table, employee ID, passport number, license number, all those fields can uniquely identify each record in a table. So all these three will act as a candidate keys. So primary key is a field which can uniquely identify each record in a table. Candidate key is all those fields which can uniquely identify each record in a table, that comprises your candidate keys. Now the next is alternate keys and composite keys. Now from all candidate keys, one key will considered as a primary key, and the rest of the candidate keys that were not chosen as primary key will act as a alternate keys. So in our table, passport number and license number will not considered as a primary key. So these two, employee ID will act as a primary key, and passport number and license number will act as an alternate keys. And next key is composite key. A composite key is that primary key that consists of two or more tables. If your table do not have any key which can uniquely identify each record in a table, so we can collectively take two or more fields which can uniquely identify each record in a table, and that is called as your composite key. Now the last one is foreign key. Now what is foreign key? Foreign key is basically used for creating the relationship among the tables, and foreign keys are those columns in a table that acts as a primary key in the another table. It is basically used for creating the relationship, because in relational database the data is stored in multiple tables. So to relate those tables we need foreign key. It enforces the referential integrity. Students, very important concept. What is referential integrity? Maintaining the consistency and accuracy of data is called as referential integrity or data integrity. In our example, we have two tables. One is department table and employee table. Every employee works in a specific department in a company. Employee and department are two different entities. So to reduce redundancy, we can't store the department information in the employee table. That's why we have taken two tables. Employee. In department table, we have two fields, that is department ID and department name. In this, department ID will act as a primary key in department table. In employee table, we have 5 fields. Here, employee ID will act as a primary key in the employee table, but the common key is department ID. Now, department ID acts as a primary key in department table, and it acts as a foreign key in the employee table. And there is one-to-many relationship. Okay, and there are two tables. One is parent table, the table that holds the primary key, that is called as parent table. So department table will act as a parent table, and here the employee table will act as a child table. I think so it's clear. So in our today's lecture we have discussed 5 types of keys. That is primary key, which is unique for each record. Next one is candidate keys, all those keys which can uniquely identify each record in a table, that is called as candidate keys. Out of candidate keys, one key will choose as primary key and rest are called as alternate keys. And collection of 2 or more fields which can act as a primary key is called as composite key. And last one is foreign key, the key which is responsible for creating the relationship among the two tables, that is called as foreign key. Now the next we have some multiple choice questions related to the topic discussed in today's lecture. The very first one is a field in one table that refers to primary key in another table is called a, yes, it has four options: candidate key, foreign key, primary key and alternate key. And the correct answer is, yes, the correct answer is foreign key. Second is, a table can have only one dash but can have multiple. Means a table can have only one, yes, a table can have only one primary key but can have multiple candidate keys. Yes, that is correct. Third one is, which feature ensures the data accuracy and consistency? That is called as, yes students, that is called as data integrity. And the last is, in a relational database, a row is also called as, yes, a row is also called as tuple or record. So we have some question answers related to the topic discussed. So you have, I think so, you all will be able to answer these questions. So try these questions. Thank you.